I'm just here doing the check over on your Polaris Sportsman 850 Touring. I'm going to sum this up as we begin. This bike needs a lot of work. So I'm going to go through it as best I can with the list that I have made, and I apologize in advance for jumping around a bit because that's kind of the way that's kind of the way the work is. So let's start here at the back end, and hopefully I can show you as many things as I can with one hand. So let's see. I'm just going to grab a hold of the bottom of that back wheel, and hopefully I can show you. I don't know if I can show you this. What we're watching for is the rear differential. So you can see it going up and down in the frame. It'll be on the right hand side of your picture, just over the top of the upper control arm where it mounts to the frame. If you look at the top of the differential, that's moving on the mounting holes. And what is causing that is that the bolts that run through here and another one in the front, they're either wore in the case or wore in the frame, elongated, or both. I wouldn't know which until I take it apart. So that's first. Why that becomes a problem also is because you have other issues in your rear suspension, like this guy. So if I grab a hold of that back end, you can see everything's moving back here. It's really fun. So let's see. Upper and lower control arm bushings and sleeves. I think this side is not as bad, but I would almost suggest doing them all at the same time, even if there's only a little tiny bit of play. And part of the reason why I can't tell you exactly how much is play is on this side right at the moment is because if we go in here, you can see that your wheels are contacting this portion in here somewhere of those upper control arms. And sorry to zoom in so far. And where I can show you that is if we go to the right rear wheel, you can see all the paint's wore off. All that strip, that's where it's been hitting on that control arm. And the side that is the worst is the side that has the worst suspension problems with bushings and sleeves and stuff. And it was actually turning so hard that with all four wheels off the ground and the bike in neutral, that I was having great difficulty turning the rear wheels. So the transmission was in neutral, but it was just like it had a little brake on because there was so much weight just sagging off that control arm. And you can see the marks that it's making in it right there. So I also got to turn my little light on here for you. There you go. It makes it a little bit easier to see things. So that's most of that part. You also have a leaking CV boot on the inner boot on the rear diff. The left side wheel needs a wheel bearing. We're not going to go to the gear case fluid yet. Let's try and stick with a theme of suspension and drive parts first, and then we'll come back. But I will, one thing I will mention here is your rear brake pads. You can go a little while longer with those, but when I show you the front left one, you might just want to get them all changed at the same time because they're not brand new for sure. They do have wear in them. Let's see. Oh yes, one other thing. Rear U-joint. That's starting to get a little bit of play in it here at your transmission case. We can grease the heck out of it, and you can try and go longer, but you're going to be pulling this rear diff back and out probably to fix up all the mounts and stuff for the rear diff. So it would be a good time to do that U-joint at the same time anyway. Just continuing on, and if we go down in here, this is going to be a hard one to show you. You'll be able to see it enough down in here. I'm going to go up with my hand, and you can see all the floppy that we have with that rear prop shaft yoke. that guy needs to be replaced. So of course that also would include having to put a new rear U-joint in there as well. Excuse me. Since we're on this side of the bike, just pop the heat shield cover off a little bit. I noticed the bike has an exhaust leak. I can say pretty sure that there's one here going by all the black stuff that I see. I also go back here and I see where the exhaust is hitting on the rear rack support, and it's also laying on top of your transmission case, and the angle that the pipe is on here at the donut gasket at the rear of the exhaust, and if you look at the springs, they're both pretty uneven. And if I step back, and I can actually see where either somebody ran into you or you backed into something, that exhaust has been bent in. That needs to be straightened out, likely a new gasket here. Eventually what you're going to do here, up in this spot, is it's going to wear a hole through the heat shield and then through the exhaust pipe, if it hasn't already. And you'll also likely need a new gasket up in here, and hopefully the stud bolts, the nuts will come off and we don't have to fight with those too much. What's next? So we'll go up here to the front, and what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to have to take a moment towards the end of this and just check my list over just to make sure that I've gotten everything for you. Brake pads aren't too bad on this right front wheel. The inner ones are starting to get the inner pads getting a bit wore. But for sure you're going to need new pads anyway, because this caliper has been sticking on the outer pad and it's almost wore down to the metal. So the new pads on both sides. I don't do one wheel at a time. I always do them as a set. If you want to do the rear one at the same time, we can do that. The sliders and everything will have to be checked and make sure that nothing's corroded up on that caliper. Make sure that's moving free, because right now it's just kind of stuck there. Okay, upper and lower ball joints, both sides, and you can see these pretty easy. That one there and that one there especially, that's going to fall out soon. I've actually had a bike in here, Can-Am Maverick, one time where I lifted it up and just went like that on the A-arm and the ball joint fell apart. So that's not something you want to do out on a trail. My suggestion is, for right now, if you want to take the bike, I would use it in the yard. I wouldn't go too far with it like that, that's for sure. Let's see. A little harder for me to show you the upper ball joints. Usually I don't see as much wear in those, but I do. But they are worn, and I think either this one or the one over here has been replaced before, because they don't match. But I would replace those at the same time. Let's see. Got to keep all this straight in my head. So I think I already showed you a little bit of this in the other video, because I'd mentioned how loose this bolt was. So that is upper and lower bushing sleeves. This weldment on the frame where the bolt runs through will likely have to be plated, possibly this one. We'll just do the best we can. If it gets to, I have to get into the front side of this mount, that means everything on the front is coming off. Winch is coming off, front bumpers coming off, all that stuff. Same thing applies. Then we get up into having to remove a rad. So we'll just have to see what the holes look like when we take everything apart. But I don't see the bolts moving on the top, but for sure I see them moving on the bottom. Let's see. Upper and lower shock mounts. Now, Polaris doesn't sell shock mounts, but I recently was able to, I came across a set of mounts for something else that may fit these, so that you don't have to replace the whole shock. There are companies down in the States that replace those, that make replacement mounts for them. They're little small companies, and I kind of just worry that you can get them again when you go with them. It's not like, I mean, eventually you're going to have to replace the shocks anyway, but anyway, if you wanted to try a set of those, I can pop the shocks off, and I can see if those, even on just the bottom, to see if the mounts will work for you. It's the same style of sleeve and rubber or nylon and stuff like that. Let's see. Inner tie rod ends, both sides. And to be completely honest, there's so much movement in the front end of this bike, I can't 100% tell if you need outer tie rod ends yet at this point. So that might come up later that you need those as well. Let's see. All the same sort of things on this side. You get the same sort of movements. I don't think the bolt was moving around though on that one, but we're pretty wore. And same for this. Same for your shock. You already know about the leak I talked to you about coming out of where your fuel pump cap screws on, and basically what I think that comes down to is you have no vent hose. The vent is plugged, and it's venting fumes out through wherever it can push them, and they'll build up a bit of pressure. I don't know if I pop that cap off it would release a whole much or not. I have not checked to see the operation of your cooling fan. I see that the level is between the high and low, so that's a good thing to see. I don't like to see them down too far because it tells me that the bike's been running hot or it's burning coolant. It's one of the others. So just make sure you're keeping that radiator flushed out with water, not with high pressure, of course, because it'll bend the aluminum fins. Going as fast as I can here. We get to your front differential. I'm going to dip that in there. That's the nice black stuff that you have in your front differential. It's filthy. It needs to be changed. And that's part of my little service that I do anyway. Same applies to your transmission. So we got here on the paper, and we see the nice black stuff. This one's not quite as black because it has a slight purplish hue, and you probably can't even see it in the camera, but it doesn't look anything like this stuff does. So I get a sample of her here for you. So you can see this one on the left is purple and this one's not. This is black, so this needed to be changed a while ago. Usually with Polaris, I think they're every couple of thousand kilometers you're supposed to drain that tranny and put new AGL fluid in it. Sorry about the wiggling around there. And last, we have your rear diff, which looks to me like it has some water contamination in it, because it's not just dirty, it's gray. So that tells me that at one point somewhere along the line, that differential is taking in some water. I can disconnect the vent hose. I'll make a note of it and just blow it out and see if there's anything that's inside of it, like mud. And we'll hope that you don't need seals. I checked on all the sides of the case. I don't see any signs that it's been leaking or anything like that. So let's just hope that you don't need anything like gear case seals or anything along those lines. This is where I have to go to my notes. Sorry. Tie rod ends, brake pads. You need a new air filter. That's pretty straightforward. Start of the season, that one's toast. I start seeing them collapsed like that. I take them out and throw them away. I do not try to blow them out with air. Start of the season, you want a new air filter and clean the sock. And what I do is I'll protect the intake and I'll blow out any dust out of the air box. I don't go too crazy with those unless they're full of mud, because you go down one dusty road and the inside of it's dusty again, especially if you're traveling with a bunch of people. Hopefully I think I mentioned the left rear wheel bearing. You also need wheel bearings. I don't know if I can show you this without the wheel off or not. That's not going to wiggle enough for me, because as soon as I start wiggling too much, everything else starts moving. But you need a left front and a right front wheel bearing. Let's see. Did the U-joints. We did the rear diff is loose in the frame. Prop shaft. We did the CV joint, the inner. Did the ball joints, control arm bushings and sleeves, shock mount. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. We did the exhaust mount, fuel tank leak, and also you're gonna have to let me know when the last time was you had your clutches looked at and your belt looked at. I recommend every 50 hours on these at least to pull that cover off, at least check the belt and blow it out with, blow all the dust out with compressed air. And you can do a quick visual check. You can compress your primary a little bit and check, make sure that your weights and your rollers are all in, you know, decent usable shape at least. So I would recommend doing that as well. On these, it's a little harder to do because you got to take a few things apart to be able to get that cover out of there. But I think that's it. I have not load tested your battery. I did check all your lights to make sure they all worked all right. I didn't do a sample for moisture content for your brake fluid. Your OEM Polaris is going to recommend, I think it's every couple of years, that you're supposed to change your brake fluid. So if you want that changed when you do the brakes, then we can do that. And I'll also do a little sample test of your coolant, but I don't expect to be too much problem with that. Once again, that's every 2 or 3 or 4 years or something you're supposed to change those out. And your tires are, well, they look pretty much brand new, so we're not going to be concerned about those. I'll make sure they all hold air. And once everything is safe to drive, I would test drive it. At this point, I would not. So would have to do some work on it before I feel comfortable driving it around too far. I just don't want it broken down on the side of the road and having to haul it back. Anyway, sorry the video is so long. You let me know how you want, if you want me to price out parts or if you're going to do that yourself. You'd mentioned heavier duty items. If you want me to do a price up for all the parts and the labor, is as much as I know of it right now. When you get into having to repair these types of mounts, I don't put a time on that stuff. It'll be whatever time it takes to figure out some kind of a little plate to put in wherever I need to. So hopefully it wouldn't be too many, but and then you have to use the little MIG welder and MIG weld them in. Put a little bit of paint on them so they don't rust for a little while anyway. Have a look at the video and let me know how you'd like to proceed. And you have a great day.